Hello, everyone. I'm Mark, 25, a finance worker living in Chicago. If you think family is always a place of love and fairness, my story might make you think twice. Picture this: you work your butt off, pull yourself through every hardship, but your family never acknowledges it. Instead, they shower all their attention on your younger brother, throw lavish parties for him, and then turn to you with a massive bill expecting you to pay. Funny, right? But that was my life 2 years ago when I decided to walk away from my family to rediscover myself. Today I'm sharing a story of favoritism, unreasonable demands, and the moment I realized that sometimes family isn't where you belong. Join me as we dive in, and I promise by the end of this video, you'll have a whole new perspective on family and your own worth. Ready? Stick around, because this story isn't just about me. It might be about you. Growing up in suburban Illinois, I always felt like an outsider in my own home. My parents, John and Linda, had 2 kids, me and my brother Stephen, 2 years younger. From a young age, I noticed one thing. Stephen was always the center of attention. When I got an A in school, my mom would nod and say, "Good job, Mark." But when Stephen brought home a scribbled drawing from art class, my dad would hang it in the living room like it was a masterpiece. I remember winning first place in a school math competition in 6th grade. I ran home trophy in hand, thinking my parents would be proud. They patted my shoulder, said, "Nice work, son," and then asked Stephen about his basketball game. Meanwhile, when Stephen won a bronze medal in a local soccer tournament, they threw a barbecue, invited the whole extended family, and bought him new soccer cleats. I told myself it was just how parents showed love, but deep down, I knew something was off. In high school, the favoritism became even clearer. I worked part-time at a grocery store, saving every penny for textbooks and college prep. Stephen, he got a new bike from our parents, just for trying hard in class. I wasn't jealous, but I started wondering, why did I have to work twice as hard to be noticed? Psychologist Susan Newman says parental favoritism can cause deep emotional wounds, making the overlooked child feel unworthy. I hadn't read that study as a kid, but I felt it every day. By college, I paid my tuition through scholarships and 3 part-time jobs. Stephen, on the other hand, got a used car from our parents to commute to school, full tuition coverage, and a monthly allowance. I never asked them for a dime, but every time I saw Stephen spend freely, I wondered, why did I have to fight harder just to survive? The day I graduated college is a milestone I'll never forget, but not for joy. After the ceremony, I stood alone on campus holding my honors degree, waiting for my parents. They showed up, handed me a cheap bouquet from the supermarket, and said, "So where are you taking us to celebrate?" I used $500 of my part-time job savings to pay for that dinner at a modest Italian restaurant. No one said congratulations. No one mentioned how hard I'd worked for that degree. The meal passed like any other night, and I told myself maybe that's just family. They deserve my kindness, even if they don't do anything for me. But that empty feeling clung to me. 2 years later, it was Stephen's turn to graduate. One morning, as I sipped coffee before work, my mom called me into the living room. My dad sat there looking serious while Stephen was still asleep upstairs. "Tonight is Stephen's graduation party at Grand Oak Restaurant," she said. "6 p.m. sharp, and don't forget to bring a gift for your brother. No invitation, no warmth, just an order." I hesitated. When I graduated, there was no party, no gifts, not even a kind word. Now they were renting out a fancy restaurant for Stephen. It felt like a slap in the face, but I didn't argue. I nodded, grabbed my keys, and headed to work. In my head, a plan started forming. If they wanted a gift, I'd give them one they'd never forget. All day, I was swamped at work, but my mind kept circling back to the party. I decided to buy Stephen a brand new MacBook worth nearly $2,000. I wanted the moment to be special, so I arranged for the gift to be delivered directly to the party. I pictured the delivery person walking in handing the package to Stephen in front of everyone. It would be a meaningful gesture, even if my family had never done the same for me. At 6 p.m., I left the office and drove to Grand Oak, an upscale restaurant in downtown Chicago. The second I walked in, I knew something was wrong. The place was packed over 50 guests, from Stephen's friends to distant relatives to my dad's co-workers. Long tables were neatly arranged, every seat taken, but there was no place for me. My mom spotted me, walked over, crossed her arms, and shook her head. "You're late. There's no room left." I frowned, pointing to an empty chair near Stephen. "What about that one?" She glanced where I pointed, then turned back, saying firmly, "That's reserved for Stephen's friend." I let out a dry laugh. An hour ago, I didn't even know I was expected to show up yet. They'd saved a seat for someone arriving later than me. "So Stephen's friend gets a seat, but I don't." My dad nodded as if it were obvious. My mom, losing patience, crossed her arms and asked, "Where's Stephen's gift?" "Honestly, if you didn't bring one, you should leave to avoid embarrassing the family." Whispers started around the table. "No gift. He's the older brother and didn't bring anything. No gift, but still wants to eat." I heard every word, every judgmental glance from Stephen's friends, from distant relatives. People who never cared about me, but now felt entitled to criticize. I just smiled a smile with no joy. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, Apple Store delivery. I answered, speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yes, bring it in now." As the delivery person walked into the restaurant, holding the MacBook box, all eyes turned to me. I took a deep breath, stepped forward, and said loudly, "Stephen, this is your gift, a brand new MacBook." The room erupted in murmurs. Stephen looked up, eyes wide in disbelief. "For real," he shouted, voice full of excitement. People around the table whispered in admiration. My parents beamed with pride, as if they'd done something great. My mom whispered to a relative, "I told you Mark wouldn't show up empty-handed." My dad nodded, saying, "Maybe we underestimated him. He knows his duty." I looked around, seeing their satisfied faces, their smugness, as if I'd done exactly what they expected. I smirked, then calmly added, "But I think you don't need it anymore." The room went silent. Stephen froze, his smile, vanishing. My mom stiffened, eyes narrowing in confusion. My dad frowned, trying to process what was happening. I turned to the delivery person, voice steady. "Sorry, I'd like to cancel this order." The guy blinked, slightly surprised, but quickly regained composure, nodded, and called the store. The table sat in stunned silence. A minute later, he hung up and said, "Store confirmed the cancellation. You'll be charged a 5% fee, but the rest will be refunded in 5 business days." I gave a small smile. "No problem, thank you." He nodded, turned, and left, leaving the room thick with tension. Stephen reacted first. He jumped up his chair, scraping the floor. "Are you crazy? Are you joking? Why would you cancel it?" My dad slammed his hand on the table, face red. "Mark, what the hell are you doing, trying to humiliate the family in front of everyone?" My mom, shocked and furious, gasped, "What's wrong with you? Why would you pull this ridiculous stunt? I knew you could never be kind." Stephen yelled, face flushed. "You did this just to embarrass me in front of my friends, didn't you?" The whispers around the table grew louder. I looked at each of them, heard every word, but I wasn't angry. I didn't argue. I just stayed quiet. Then before leaving, I said, I don't have a seat at this table, so there's no reason for me to spend $2,000 on Stephen or this family. I walked out of the restaurant, ignoring the calls behind me. Instead of going home, I drove to a familiar coffee shop on the corner, a quiet place where no one knew me. I ordered an Americano, sat in a corner, and let my body relax. The rich coffee aroma filled the air, mixing with soft jazz from the speakers. I stared at the wooden table, my mind blank. But then memories flooded back like an old movie in slow motion. As a kid, I knew I wasn't the most loved. When I topped my class in final exams, my parents didn't even mention it. But when Stephen nearly failed a subject and had to retake it, they took him to a fancy restaurant, saying he tried so hard. When I got into college, I handled everything, tuition, housing, all of it. Stephen got a car, an allowance, everything handed to him. And my graduation day, no party, no gifts, just a dinner I paid for. I remembered my first full-time paycheck. I was thrilled, thinking I could finally build a future. But that same day, my parents called me into the living room. Starting this month, you'll pay $2,000 for rent and living expenses, my mom said. No hesitation. I was stunned. $2,000, this isn't a five-star hotel, my dad replied. You have a job now, you need to contribute. Stephen's still in school, no income. We're getting old, we can't work like before. I said I'd move out with $2,000. I could rent a nicer apartment. After some back and forth, they lowered it to $1,000. I agreed not out of fear, but because I still believed in family. I was wrong. The night after Stephen's party, I got home at 10 p.m., exhausted and craving quiet. But my parents were waiting in the living room. I braced for a fight, but they didn't yell. Instead, my mom looked at me, voice unusually soft. I know you weren't happy today. We should have saved you a seat. I'm sorry. My dad nodded. We're family. We can work this out. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I'd been too harsh. Maybe they didn't mean to treat me badly. But then my dad continued. Stephen's really upset you canceled the gift. He was counting on that. MacBook. So instead of the MacBook, you can make it up another way. The bill for tonight's party was $4,600. Pay half, $2 or $300 as his graduation gift. I stared at them, then laughed. No hesitation. No, my mom froze, her smile gone. Mark, don't be selfish, she said, her voice no longer soft. Family helps each other. That's how it works. Helping doesn't mean being used. I shot back. My dad lost patience. You earn the most in this house and you can't contribute a little. Do you know how hard we work to provide for you and Stephen? I cut him off. You don't provide for me. I've provided for myself for years. The room grew tense. My mom exploded. And you wonder why you always feel distant from the family. You always separate yourself, never try to connect, never generous with your brother. I looked her in the eye. Have you ever been generous with me? She froze. I stepped forward, voice calm but sharp. When I graduated with honors, what did you do? Bought a cheap bouquet and told me to throw my own party. Then made me pay for dinner. Stephen averaged graduation, and you throw a huge party with over 50 guests. Did I have a seat at that table? No, but Stephen's friend did. Did I buy him a gift? Yes, but because I refused to pay for the party. Now I'm selfish. My dad cleared his throat, trying to justify. We didn't throw you a party because we knew you were independent. You didn't need us. I scoffed. Right, Because I took care of myself. You used that as an excuse to ignore me. And because Stephen never had to be independent, you kept spoiling him. My words hung in the air. They didn't argue back, but I knew it wasn't because they understood. They just didn't know what to say. I sighed. If you're only apologizing to ask for money, there's nothing left to talk about. I turned, walked to my room, ignoring their calls. I was tired, but one thing was clear: I was leaving this house. I thought things would settle down, but I was wrong. 2 days later, my parents asked me to give my car to Stephen. His car's old, Mark, my dad said. He needs a new one to go to job interviews. I looked at them, trying to stay calm. Are you serious? My mom nodded. You got a job before Stephen, you can help him out. My dad added. You're the older brother. You need to support him. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. This car, I said, voice dripping with sarcasm. I saved for 6 months to buy. I worked. I budgeted every penny. Stevens never had to save for anything. And now he wants my car. My dad's tone hardened. Stephen just graduated. He has no money. He needs a car to go to interviews and get a good job. You have a stable income. You can buy another one. I shrugged. If he needs a car, he can drive his old one for a while, or learn to save like I did. But if you want him to have my car, buy it from me. My dad froze, then exploded. What did you just say? He slammed his hand on the table, startling my mom. You dare ask us to pay to help your brother? I looked him in the eye. If you want me to help, at least make it fair. My dad's face turned red. He shouted, Get out of my house. The room went silent. My mom was stunned. Stephen sat there motionless. I wasn't surprised. If anything, I felt like I was watching a play I already knew the ending to. I took a deep breath, nodded. Fine. I went to my room, didn't look back. 30 minutes later, I dragged 2 suitcases downstairs. I didn't need much clothes, some personal items, important documents. I left everything tied to that house. I didn't want any reminders. As I reached for the doorknob, my dad's voice came from behind. Let's see how you survive without family. I paused for a second, not because his words shook me, but because I realized something in their eyes. I needed them to survive. They thought I couldn't be happy without them. They were wrong. I said nothing, opened the door, stepped out, and closed a chapter of my life. I drove away, not looking back. A week later, I rented a small hotel room, a temporary spot, while I searched for an apartment. The room was nothing special, but it was mine. No arguments, no judgmental looks, no ridiculous demands. After 10 days of searching, I found the perfect apartment, 50 square meters, just enough to live comfortably. Rent was only $500 a month, reasonable for my income. I had space to rest, work, and most importantly, be free. The days that followed, my life started to feel truly mine. I no longer woke up with a heavy heart. No more nagging every morning. No one invaded my space with absurd requests. Every dollar I earned, every effort I made was now for me. I spent time decorating my apartment my way, bought a few plants, hung some art, set up a tidy desk. I focused on my career, planned my finances, and for the first time in years, I had time to relax. I read books, watched movies, enjoyed small things I hadn't allowed myself before. 6 months later, Stephen still hadn't found a job. He was still living off our parents, no pressure to be independent. I'd grown used to the quiet of living alone until my mom called. It was the first time she'd reached out in 6 months. Her voice was softer than usual. I miss you, Mark. It's been a while since you came home. Can we meet? I was surprised but agreed. She suggested a cafe downtown, a place we'd never been. But when I walked in, I understood why. It wasn't just her, my dad and Stephen were there too. Once again, I'd walked into a family meeting I wasn't warned about. My mom smiled, acting like this was just a casual catch-up. How are you? How's work? I didn't beat around the bush. Mom, get to the point. She flinched, but quickly regained composure, sighed, and said, Can you loan us $1,000? I raised an eyebrow, still processing her words. My dad cleared his throat. Stephen wants to open a coffee shop. He has a great idea, but bank interest rates are too high. If you loan it for a year, we promise to pay you back in full. I looked at Stephen. He tried to look serious, but I saw the eagerness in his eyes. I laughed, shaking my head. Really? Stephen hasn't earned a dime, and you think he can run a business? My mom's voice grew desperate. Stephen's grown up, Mark. He needs a chance. Can't you help him this time? We're family. Stephen chimed in. I'll pay you back as soon as I make a profit. This is my big shot, bro. I smiled, but in my head it was clear. If I gave the money, I'd never see it again. I shook my head. No. My dad instantly flared up. Don't be selfish, Mark, he shouted. You only think about yourself. Are you jealous of your brother, scared he'll outshine you? I looked at him, face unchanged. Fine, I'll do it. My mom's eyes lit up. Stephen exhaled. My dad instantly softened his voice. Warm, that's right, son. Family helps each other, but I wasn't done. I smiled all alone. But I paused, letting my words sink in. You and Stephen have to sign a loan contract. The collateral will be the house you're living in. If you can't pay back in a year, the house is mine. The cafe went quiet. My mom's jaw dropped. My dad's eyes widened in disbelief. Stephen sat frozen. I sat there smiling like we were having a friendly chat. We're family, right? You believe Stephen will succeed, so this shouldn't be a problem. Should it? My dad opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at me, searching for a way out, but finally just said, I don't have a son like you. I wasn't surprised. Those words didn't hurt anymore. I shrugged, stood up, grabbed my coat, and said, That's your choice. Goodbye. No one stopped me as I walked out. No one called after me, and I didn't expect them to. After that day, I cut all contact. No calls, no texts, no manipulation games. I moved forward, no regrets. Until last week, I ran into my cousin Emily at a diner. We weren't close, but we'd chat occasionally. She sighed when she saw me shaking her head like she didn't know where to start. Do you know what's going on with your family? I shrugged. Not really, but tell me. Emily lowered her voice. They're struggling. Stephen's coffee shop failed after 3 months. No customers, huge losses. They had to sell it. I wasn't surprised. Stephen had never earned his own money, never managed anything. His failure was inevitable. There's more. Emily continued. Your parents are selling the house to cover Stephen's debts. They have no choice. They're looking for a smaller place to move to. I sipped my coffee, silent for a moment. I didn't feel joy nor regret. This was just the result of their choices. My parents chose Stephen, bet everything on him, and now they were paying the price. I looked at Emily, gave a faint smile. I gave them a chance. She nodded, saying nothing more. I stood up, patted her shoulder. If they ask about me, tell them this. I'm doing fine, and I'm not coming back. Even if Emily understood me, I know many still side with Stephen and my parents. They think I, as the older brother, have a duty to sacrifice for my sibling. especially since I earned money first. I agree, but only if it's a real family, where parents treat everyone fairly, where help comes from love, not manipulation or obligation. To make this story hit closer to home, let's hear about Sarah, a 30-year-old nurse from Ohio. She grew up in a family where her younger sister Mia, a dancer, was always pampered by their parents. Sarah paid her own way through college, while her parents covered Mia's dance academy fees. When Sarah got married, her parents gave her $500. Mia's engagement party, they spent $10,000. Sarah confronted them only to hear, "Mia needs support. You're fine." Eventually, Sarah limited contact, focusing on her own family. It hurt, she says, but I had to choose my peace. Then there's James, engineer from Texas. His older brother, Nate, a football star, was always the family's pride. James, a bookworm, was ignored. When James got a scholarship to MIT, his parents didn't attend his graduation. But when Nate got a minor promotion, they threw a big party. James moved away and rarely speaks to his family. I realized, he says, they loved the idea of me supporting Nate, not me as a person. These stories show how favoritism creates a hierarchy where one child's needs overshadow the others. According to the Journal of Family Psychology, 70% of children in favoritism-driven families report lower self-esteem. For Sarah and James, walking away was how they reclaimed their worth, just like I did. Back to my story. After cutting contact, I kept building my life. I got promoted at my company, started saving for a house, and found friends who truly valued me. I joined a running club in Chicago, where I met inspiring people who helped me see that family isn't everything. It's the people you choose to be with. But the story doesn't stop there. A year later, I got an email from my mom. She wrote, "Mark, I know you're angry, but Steven's struggling. He's $20,000 in debt after the coffee shop failed. Can you help him this time? We're family." I read the email, then deleted it. No reply. Not because I didn't care, but because I'd learned family isn't an excuse for exploitation. Psychologist Carl Pillemer says, favoritism creates a scarcity mindset where parents believe only one child can shine. This pits siblings against each other, fostering resentment. For me, my parents saw Stephen as the star, so I was just the supporter. When I refused that role, they got angry not because I was wrong, but because I challenged their worldview. A 2020 AITA found 65% of adults from favoritism-driven families have strained sibling relationships. Therapy can help, but only if the family acknowledges the issue. My parents never did. I kept living my life, but not without challenges. Some nights I wondered if I was too harsh. Maybe I should forgive, give them another chance. But then I remembered every time I gave them a chance, they demanded more. I recall once, shortly after moving out, my mom called and invited me to dinner. I thought maybe they wanted to reconcile. But halfway through the meal, my dad said, "Stephen needs a new laptop to learn online business skills. Can you buy it for him?" I refused, and the dinner ended in silence. That was the last time I ate with them. Now I live my life free from unreasonable expectations. I attend financial workshops, started a blog on money management, and find joy in helping others achieve the financial freedom I fought for. I don't hate my family. I just choose not to let them define me. And here's the lesson I want to share with you. You can't change a toxic family, but you can change how you respond. If you're the invisible child, know that you don't have to fund someone else's dreams or endure manipulation. Set boundaries, prioritize your mental health, and build a life where you're valued. What do you think? Have you ever faced favoritism in your family? Share your story in the comments, and let's start a conversation. If this story resonated with you, hit like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Family isn't always a safe haven. A story of favoritism and the journey to freedom. After cutting ties with my family, I felt a relief I'd never experienced before. My life in Chicago started to truly blossom. I got promoted to team manager at my finance company, a big step in my career. I began attending investment workshops where I not only learned, but connected with like-minded people. One of them was Rachel, an independent financial advisor, who became my close friend. She'd joke that I was a financial freedom warrior, and I loved how she saw me not as a son abandoned by family, but as someone building their own life. But even though my new life seemed perfect, the shadow of my family hadn't fully disappeared. And like a Hollywood drama, the next twists in this story were more intense than I could have imagined. One Saturday afternoon, while jogging along Lake Michigan, my phone rang. Unknown number, but a Chicago area code. I hesitated, but picked up. The voice on the other end stopped me. Cold. It was Stephen. "Mark," he said, voice shaky. "I need to talk. It's important." I stopped, panting, sweat dripping down my face. Stephen hadn't called me since I left home. For a moment, I thought maybe he wanted to apologize to make amends. But I'd learned with my family nothing was ever that simple. "Speak," I said, voice cold. Stephen took a deep breath. I'm in big trouble. I need your help. Meet me at Joe's Coffee on Clark Street, 6 p.m. tonight." Okay, I was about to refuse, but something in his voice, desperation, made me curious. "Fine," I said, "but don't expect me to agree to anything easily." He hung up, and I stood there staring at the shimmering lake, wondering what I'd just agreed to. At 6 p.m., I walked into Joe's Coffee, a cozy spot with warm yellow lights and the smell of freshly baked cookies. Stephen was already there, sitting in a corner wearing a gray hoodie, looking more worn than the last time I saw him. Gone was his usual confidence. I sat across from him, arms crossed. "Talk. What's going on?" Stephen glanced around as if afraid someone was listening, then lowered his voice. "I did something stupid, Mark. After the coffee shop failed, I borrowed money from some people, not a bank. Bad people." My heart raced. "You mean loan sharks?" Stephen nodded, eyes on the table. "I owe them $30,000. They're threatening me, Mark. If I don't pay in 2 weeks, they say they'll do something to me." I leaned back, trying to stay calm, but my mind was a storm. "And you want me to do what, give you money to pay off mobsters?" Stephen looked up, eyes red. "Bro, I know I messed up. I know you hate me for everything before that, but I have no one else to turn to. Mom and Dad sold the house. They've got nothing. You're my only hope." I laughed, not out of amusement, but at the irony. "Stephen, do you remember the last time we talked? You sat there while Mom and Dad asked me for $50,000 for your damn coffee shop. Now you want more money. Why should I help you after everything this family's done to me?" Stephen bowed his head, voice choking. "Because I'm your brother, and because I'm sorry. I know you were treated unfairly. I saw it all, but I did nothing. I was selfish. But now, I need you." I sat there staring at him. Part of me wanted to walk away, let Stephen deal with his consequences. But another part, the part that remembered us as kids when Stephen would chase me in the park laughing, made me hesitate. I sighed. "I'm not promising anything, but I need time to think. And if I help, there'll be conditions." Stephen nodded frantically, like I'd thrown him a lifeline. "Thank you, Mark. I'll do whatever you want." I left the cafe with mixed feelings, anger, doubt, and a tiny sliver of hope that maybe, just maybe, Stephen had changed. But the story didn't end there. 2 days later, while I was working at the office, a strange man appeared at the front desk, tall, wearing a black suit, but something about him sent chills down my spine. Maybe the way he smiled like a wolf. "Mark Thompson?" he asked, voice low. I nodded, wary. "I'm Vince, a friend of Stephen's. He says you can help with our little problem." My stomach dropped. This wasn't a friend. This was one of the people Stephen owed. I kept my voice steady. "I don't know what you're talking about." "If Stephen owes you, talk to him." Vince tilted his head, smile unchanged. "Oh, I talked to Stephen, but he says his big brother's the one with the money, and I don't like waiting. 2 weeks, Mark. $30,000. Or it's not just Stephen who'll have problems." He turned, walked out, leaving me standing there, heart pounding. I immediately called Stephen, but he didn't pick up. I texted demanding an explanation, but no response. That night I drove to my parents' old house, now a smaller condo in the suburbs. I knocked and my mom opened the door, looking older than the last time I saw her. "Mark," she said, voice surprised. "What are you doing here? I didn't waste time." "Where's Stephen?" "He's in debt to loan sharks, and now they're coming for me." My mom paled, pulled me inside. My dad was on the couch looking tired. Stephen was there, curled up in a corner, not daring to look at me. "Talk," I snapped. "Why do they know about me?" Stephen mumbled. I told them you had money. I thought if they knew about you, they'd give me more time." I felt my blood boil. "You dragged me into your mess. You thought I was your personal bank." My dad stood, voice trembling. "Mark, don't blame your brother. He's just trying to save himself. We're family. You have to help him." I turned to him, incredulous. "Family? When have you ever treated me like family? When I graduated? When I worked myself to exhaustion to support myself? Or when you demanded I pay for everything for Stephen?" My mom started crying. "Mark, we were wrong. But Stephen's in danger. You can't abandon him." I looked at them, my mom sobbing, my dad pleading, Stephen trembling. For a moment I wanted to scream, to run from this place forever. But then I remembered something Rachel once said. Sometimes helping isn't about them, but about being a better version of yourself. I took a deep breath. "I'll help Stephen, but not for you or for him. I'm doing it because I don't want to live with guilt if he gets hurt. But this is the last time. And there are conditions." I turned to Stephen. "You'll work to pay off the debt to me, not them. You'll join a gambling addiction program if needed, and you won't contact me after this." Stephen nodded, tears streaming. My parents looked at me, grateful, but ashamed. I contacted a guy from my running club, a lawyer named Mike, who had experience with sensitive legal issues. Mike helped me negotiate with Vince and his crew. I paid $15,000 from my savings, and Mike worked with the police to ensure Stephen was protected, while Vince's group was investigated. Stephen started working at an auto shop to repay me, and for the first time, I saw him try, really try. But I kept my word after this was over. I didn't contact him again. I thought that was the end, but life's never that simple. A year later, as I was preparing to buy a small house in suburban Chicago, I got a letter, handwritten, rare in this digital age. It was from my dad. He wrote, "Mark, I know I was wrong. I favored Stephen, thinking he needed us more than you. I didn't see how strong you were, how resilient. We sold the condo and moved to a rental apartment. Stephen's working, trying to stand on his own. I'm not asking for money or for you to come back. I just want to say I'm proud of you. even if I never said it. I read the letter, folded it, and didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need his approval anymore. I'd found my worth, not through family, but through myself. But family drama never stops. One evening while having dinner with Rachel, my phone rang. Another unknown number. I picked up and a woman's voice said, "Mark Thompson, I'm Lisa Stevens' girlfriend." I frowned. "Steven, what do you want?" Lisa sighed. "Steven talks about you a lot. He's trying to change, but there's something you need to know. He's planning to sue you." I nearly dropped the phone. "Sue me for what?" Lisa lowered her voice. "He says you owe him part of the family estate. He thinks when your parents sold the house, you took some of the money. I know it's not true, but he's obsessed. I'm calling to warn you." I hung up, my head spinning. Steven suing me. After everything I did paying off his debt, saving him from loan sharks. I called Mike immediately. He reassured me. "Don't worry, Mark. He has no legal ground. But we need to prepare." Over the next few weeks, I worked with Mike to gather evidence receipts, from paying Vince emails from my parents, everything proving I never took family money. Eventually, Steven dropped the lawsuit, but not because of reason. Lisa revealed she'd confronted him, making him admit he just wanted to pressure me to return to the family. That twist taught me something my family would never change. They'd always try to pull me back into their chaos, whether through guilt, threats, or lawsuits. I decided to move to a new Chicago neighborhood, changed my phone number, and cut all final ties. I don't hate them, but I chose myself. Now I live in a small house with a backyard garden where I grow vegetables and flowers. I write books on financial freedom, host free workshops for young adults, helping them avoid the traps I fell into. And every evening as I sit on my porch watching the sunset, I know I made the right choice. What do you think of this story? Have you ever been put in an unfair family situation? Share in the comments, because I believe we can learn from each other. If you found this story thought-provoking, hit like, subscribe, and share. I'll keep telling real stories because I know someone out there needs to hear them. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next video. My life in the new Chicago neighborhood finally found a steady rhythm. The small house with the backyard garden became my sanctuary, where I could water plants, read, and enjoy peaceful moments I never had living with my family. My career kept growing. I wasn't just leading my finance team, but started getting invited to speak at personal finance workshops across the Midwest. My blog, Freedom Over Debt, gained thousands of followers, and I felt I was truly making a difference. But if you think my story ended with a happy Hollywood ending, you're mistaken. My family, like a storm that never fades, found ways to drag me back into their drama, with twists I couldn't believe. One Sunday morning, as I brewed coffee in my cozy kitchen, the doorbell rang. I rarely had visitors, especially on weekends, so I was curious. Opening the door, I saw a woman, about 30, brown hair tied up, wearing a beige trench coat. She smiled, but something in her eyes put me on edge. "Mark Thompson?" she asked, voice soft but sharp. I nodded. "Yes, that's me. Who are you?" She extended her hand. "I'm Claire Bennett, a freelance journalist. I'm working on a piece about complex family stories, and I heard about you. From a source." My heart raced. "A source," I repeated, voice tense. Claire nodded. "I can't disclose, but I know about you, Steven, and your family. I think your story could inspire people. Do you have time to talk?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to slam the door and forget this, but another part the part that wrote a blog to help others overcome struggles, saw this as a chance to share my lesson. I invited Claire in, and we sat in my living room, sunlight streaming through the window, illuminating my plants. Claire pulled out a recorder and asked about my childhood, my parents' favoritism the moment I canceled the MacBook at Stephen's graduation party, and my journey leaving my family. I told her everything, no holding back, thinking if my story could help someone, it was worth it. But when Claire asked, "Do you ever think about reconciling with your family?" I paused. "No," I said, "they've had too many chances. I don't hate them, but I don't need them to be happy." Claire nodded, jotting notes, then turned off the recorder. "Thank you, Mark. The article will run in a major online magazine. I'll send you a draft before it's published." She left, and I felt relieved, but also a bad gut feeling. I had no idea that sharing my story would open a Pandora's box of trouble. 2 weeks later, Claire sent me the draft titled, "When Family Becomes a Burden, One Son's Journey to Freedom." The piece was detailed, moving, and truthful, but it used my real name, and my family's a detail I didn't realize would have consequences. I approved it, thinking it would only spread to a small audience. I was wrong. The article went viral. It was shared on Reddit, Twitter, even discussed on family psychology podcasts. People commented, some empathizing with me, calling me a hero for standing up to favoritism, while others criticized me, saying I was selfish for abandoning my family. I tried not to care, but one evening while checking emails, I got a message from an unknown address. "You think you can smear my family and get away with it? Meet me or you'll regret it." No signature, but I knew it was Stephen. My heart sank. I thought he'd learned his lesson after the failed lawsuit, but clearly his resentment still simmered. I called Mike, my lawyer, and told him. Mike sighed. "Mark, you need to be careful. Stephen has no legal ground, but he might try to stir trouble. I suggest filing a restraining order if he threatens again." I agreed, but before doing anything, I wanted to face Stephen one last time. I replied to the email setting a meeting at a public park over the weekend, a crowded, safe place. When I arrived, Stephen was there sitting on a bench wearing his familiar hoodie, but this time he didn't look defeated. He looked angry. "Who do you think you are, Mark?" he yelled the second he saw me. "Telling the world our family story, shaming Mom and Dad, making me look like a loser." I stayed calm. "Stephen, I told the truth. I didn't smear anyone. If you feel ashamed, maybe ask yourself why." Stephen stepped closer, fists clenched. "You always thought you were better than me. Huh? You left Mom and Dad in debt, and now you're living like a king in your new house." I stepped back, cautious. "I paid off your debt, Stephen. I saved you from loan sharks. I don't owe you anything." He scoffed. "Oh, you think that's enough? I know you've got money, Mark. Your blog, your workshops, you're raking it in. Mom and Dad are living in a dump, and you won't even help." The argument drew stares from passers-by. I lowered my voice. "Stephen, I gave you a chance. I gave the whole family chances, but you and Mom and Dad just keep demanding." "I'm not your bank," Stephen shouted. "You're not my family," and lunged like he was going to hit me. Luckily, a nearby jogger intervened, pulling him back. I turned, walked away, heart racing. The next day, I filed for a restraining order against Stephen. The court approved it, and I thought that was the end. I was wrong again. A month later, as I prepared for a major workshop at a downtown Chicago convention center, I got a call from Rachel. Her voice was frantic. "Mark, you need to check the news now. There's something about your family." I opened my laptop, heart pounding, and saw a headline on a local news site. Son famous for abandoning family, now accused of financial fraud. The article claimed Mark Thompson had swindled my parents and brother out of their family estate and used a favoritism story to build a personal brand, profiting off public sympathy. The source: an anonymous relative in the Thompson family. I felt the ground collapse beneath me. This wasn't just gossip, this was a deliberate attack. I called Mike and we started investigating. Turns out Stephen had contacted a tabloid reporter, feeding them a fabricated version of our story. He claimed I'd manipulated my parents into selling the house, took the money for myself, and used the favoritism story as an excuse to shirk family responsibility. Worse, my parents didn't deny it. In a short TV interview, my mom cried, saying Mark used to be a good son. We don't know why he turned his back on us. My dad added, we gave him everything, but he only cares about money. I couldn't believe it. After everything I'd done paying Stephen's debt, refusing to take a dime of family money, they were slandering me. Mike reassured me. Mark, this is libel. We have evidence, receipts, emails, documents. We can sue them for defamation. But I didn't want to sue my family, even if they deserved it. I just wanted the truth out. I contacted Claire, the journalist who wrote the first article. She agreed to help, and we prepared a rebuttal piece complete with evidence, receipts from paying Vince my lease agreement, with my parents and even my dad's email admitting his mistakes. The article was published, and public opinion started shifting back to me. But the damage was done. Some partners canceled contracts with me, and my workshop lost attendees. Amid this storm, another twist hit. One evening, while tending my garden, a car pulled up outside my house. A woman stepped out, Lisa Stevens' girlfriend, who'd warned me about the lawsuit. She looked nervous, clutching a bag tightly. Mark, she said, I need to talk. It's about Stephen and your parents. I invited her in, and she told a story that floored me. After the slander article failed, Stephen had a new plan. He wanted to start a tech startup, and to raise capital, he convinced my parents to mortgage their rental apartment. But that wasn't all. Lisa revealed Stephen had secretly recorded our conversations, including the park meeting, and planned to edit them to make me sound manipulative, hoping to extort money to stay quiet. I felt anger and sadness. Stephen wasn't just slandering me, he was ready to destroy me for cash. Lisa handed me a USB. These are copies of the recordings. I took them from Stephen's computer. I couldn't let him keep hurting you. I asked why she was doing this. Lisa sighed. Because I grew up in a toxic family. I know what it's like to be used, and I think you deserve a chance to fight. I thanked her, and after she left, I listened to the recordings. They were distorted, spliced, but I recognized my voice. Stephen had tried to paint me as the villain, but Lisa gave me the weapon to fight back. I gave the USB to Mike, and we worked with a legal team to send a cease and desist letter to Stephen. We didn't sue, not yet, but we demanded he stop all actions against me, or face consequences. Stephen went silent, but Lisa later said he'd abandoned the startup plan and left Chicago, moving to a small Wisconsin town to start over. My parents, now in an even smaller apartment, stopped contacting me. I don't know if they regret anything, but I don't care anymore. But family drama never truly ends, does it? Months later, as I prepared for a big speech at a New York finance conference, I got a text from an unknown number. Mark, it's Emily, your cousin. We need to talk. It's about your parents. I sighed, thinking I was ready for anything. I called back, and Emily said my parents were trying to sell another false story, this time to a reality TV show about estranged families. They wanted to go on TV talking about their ungrateful son, who abandoned them hoping for money and attention. Emily said, "I don't want them to do this, Mark. They're trying to exploit you again." I was exhausted but not surprised. I thanked Emily and contacted Claire again. She connected me with a TV producer who agreed to hear my side. I sent all the evidence receipts, emails, Stephen's recordings. The result: the show canceled plans to film with my parents and instead offered me a spot to share about overcoming family favoritism. I declined. I didn't want to turn my story into a TV spectacle, but I felt satisfied knowing my parents couldn't keep twisting the truth. Now I live my life with a new realization. Family isn't blood, it's the people who respect and love you. I've built a new family: Rachel, Mike, Lisa, and those I meet through work and my blog. I expanded my garden planting hydrangeas, and every morning as I water them, I remind myself I chose the right path. My story isn't about revenge, but about finding myself. And if you're watching struggling with a toxic family, I want you to know you're not alone. You have the right to set boundaries. Choose your happiness and live a life not defined by those who don't see your worth. What do you think? Have you faced family drama like this? Share in the comments, because your story might help someone else. If you found this video valuable, hit like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.